Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again, sifting through mountains of docs, guides, player feedback, you name it, to really get to the heart of things.
Yeah, and today we're diving into something pretty spicy. A World of Warcraft dungeon from the War Within called the Dawnbreaker. Level 75, 78 content.
Right, and we're not just looking at mechanics, we've got the official guides, sure, but also just raw player reactions. A lot of strong feelings about this.
Oh, definitely. We've got the detailed breakdowns, the percentages, the interrupt timings, and then we have the Reddit threads, all caps, comparisons to some infamous dungeons like the Oculus or Grimrail Depot.
So our mission today really is to look at that tension. When game design gets ambitious, maybe too ambitious, and starts feeling, well, unintuitive.
Exactly. We're unpacking what happens when you try to force something cinematic, like integrating skywriting or dragonflying, as people know it, right into the core combat loop.
We need to get beyond just the step-by-step. Why did the Dawnbreaker become such a stress point for so many players right out of the gate?
And the context is key here. This isn't just another dungeon run. It's set in Hallowfall at Tenure's Ascent. It's supposed to be this big moment for the Arathi faction.
Their big pushback against the Nerubians and this Order of Night group.
Precisely. And the whole dungeon, its structure, how you move through it, it's all built around skywriting.
Yeah.
That's the core gamble and, well, the core controversy, as we'll see.
Okay, that reliance on the flying mechanic for actual combat encounters, that sounds like the linchpin. Let's break down the setup first. What's the story here? Why is this moment so important?
Well, you have to understand the history. The Arathi discovered Hallowfall about 15 years prior, and their fleet just got wiped out, decimated.
Okay, so they're in a bad spot.
A really bad spot. They're desperate. And this new airship, the Dawnbreaker, it's basically their last hope. A technological leap, a massive warship designed to finally give them an edge against Az-J-Kahate.
So huge stakes, not just a random mission. This is make or break for them. And the dungeon starts right at the launch party.
Yeah, the quest is literally called ADD the Dawnbreaker, the christening. General Steelstrike is there, leading this big, hopeful ceremony. It's meant to be this triumphant moment.
And I'm guessing that lasts about 5 seconds.
Pretty much, yeah. The ceremony gets crashed immediately. Order of Night, loads of Nerubians. They swarm the place.
And they're not just there to blow it up.
No, that's the twist. They want to steal it, intact. They plan to use the Dawnbreaker to attack the Arathi city, Mereldar. And it's all timed with this cosmic event, Beledar shifting to darkness. Very dramatic.
Okay, so you, the player, the champion or outsider, you're thrown right into this chaos on the deck of this newly airborne ship.
Right. General Steelstrike is shouting orders. You're trying to secure the deck, fight off these invaders like the Nightfall Curseblade, protect friendly NPCs like the Arathi Lamplighter. It's immediate action.
But before you even get to the first boss, there's some kind of event.
Yes, and it sets the tone. It's this mini event where you have to load empty barrels with explosives. But the catch is, the explosives are on 2 other enemy airships nearby.
So you're already jumping or flying between ships right from the start.
Exactly. It immediately forces that dynamic movement, dealing with trash mobs while platforming, basically.
And the trash mobs aren't easy either, I gather.
No, they really demand coordination. Tanks have to watch out for the Nightfall Commander's tainted slash. It hits hard up front and leaves this nasty bleed.
Okay.
But the real killer, the thing you have to interrupt, is the Nightfall Shadow Mage's ensnaring shadows. It's a curse. If that goes off, it can easily lead to a wipe, especially early on. That's a really frustrating precedent if groups aren't on the ball.
Right. So you're already stressed managing trash. And then comes the first boss, Speaker Shadowcrown. This is where the skywriting really comes in, isn't it?
This is the moment, yeah. Shadowcrown, she's the new leader of the Order of Night. Interesting backstory. Former Ardent from the Priory got corrupted by Beledar's shadow. She's the one who planned this whole ship heist.
And her big mechanic is the one everyone talks about. Darkness comes.
That's the one. It triggers twice. Once when she hits 50% health, and again when she's almost dead at 5% health.
What happens?
She casts this huge shadow bubble. It expands rapidly, covers the whole ship deck, and the only way to survive, according to the guides and, well, reality, is to immediately hit your skywriting mount button.
In combat.
In combat. Fly off the ship and get to one of these safe zones, these radiant light spots nearby, before the bubble explodes. You don't, you just die instantly.
Okay, I can see why that caused problems. That breaks, 15 years of WoW player instinct. You just don't mount in combat, usually.
Exactly. The instinct is run, use a defensive cooldown, use a speed boost, get to the furthest edge of the platform. We saw feedback, players saying their whole group wiped because they ran to the back of the ship made perfect sense based on past experience.
But it was the wrong call here.
Totally wrong.
Yeah.
They just got flattened by the explosion. The game gives some cues, sure. Steel Strike yells something like, "She's lost control, get out of there." But it doesn't explicitly scream, "Use your skywriting mount in now."
Yeah, it sounds like the communication wasn't clear enough for such a counterintuitive, high-stakes mechanic. Was it just bad design, or were they trying to force players to use skywriting?
I lean towards the latter. It feels like a deliberate, maybe heavy-handed push to integrate the expansion's traversal system into core gameplay. More about the spectacle than, perhaps, smooth learning.
If you expect players to do something totally against their ingrained habits, you need crystal clear signals. A giant icon, maybe. Not just a voice line you might miss in the chaos.
Right. A full group wipe is a pretty harsh teaching method. And on top of that panic-inducing mechanic, Shadowcrown has other stuff going on too.
Like what?
Well, healers are dealing with burning shadows, which puts this group-wide heal absorb and does damage, followed immediately by Shadow Shroud. And everyone needs to dodge Obsidian Beam.
Which gets harder later on.
Yeah, later in the fight, she fires 4 beams instead of 3. So the safe space shrinks. It keeps the pressure on, even when you're not scrambling to mount up.
Okay, so assuming you survive Shadowcrown and the forced flight, what's next? The fight moves to the ground.
Yeah, the narrative shifts. Steel Strike radios in, basically says, uh-oh, while we were fighting up here, they wrecked Mereldar down below. So the party has to dismount, fly down into the city proper.
And this is where it becomes non-linear. That Mereldar section that got so much criticism.
This is it. You go from a single platform fight to this sprawling, kind of confusing urban environment. The main goal is to take down Anub'ikkaj.
One of the Nerubian queen's top guys,
Right.
a tactician.
Yep, described as one of her most brilliant tacticians. But here's the puzzle. He starts the fight with this massive buff called Empowered Might. Makes him almost impossible to kill initially.
So you can't just rush him?
Nope. You have to find and defeat 3 of his lieutenants who are scattered across Mereldar. Each lieutenant you kill removes a stack of Empowered Might from Anub'ikkaj.
Ah, okay. So it's like clearing objectives to weaken the final boss. We've seen that before, but maybe not in such a complex setting.
Right, the concept isn't new, but the execution in this multi-level city, that's where the trouble started. So these lieutenants, they're placed in some interesting spots.
Like where?
Well, first there's Ascendant Viscaxria. She's set up shop in the Steel Strike residence.
Wait, General Steel Strike's house?
This is the actual house. He even yells over the comms, "Ashes! There's a lieutenant in my house! Kill it!" It's kind of darkly funny. She mainly does AoE damage with shadowy decay, so healers need to be ready.
Okay, that's pretty bold. Hitting the general where he lives. Who's the second lieutenant?
That would be Excretin the Unbreakable. He's taken over the Church of the Sacred Flame.
The church. Okay. What's his deal?
He uses Terrifying Slam. It's a big knockback, and it fears you. Players quickly learned you need to position yourself with your back to a wall or a pillar, otherwise you go flying.
And potentially pull extra trash mobs you really don't want.
Exactly. In this dense environment, accidental pulls were brutal. And the third lieutenant is Death Screamer Ilvl. He's bunkered down in the city's inn, which the Nerubians are using as a command post or foothold.
And Ilvl is important because he introduces that mechanic, right? The Dark Orb.
Yes, the infamous Dark Orb. This mechanic is shared with the main boss, Anub'ikkaj, so learning it here is crucial. And it's maybe the peak of the dungeon's counterintuitive design.
How does it work?
It targets a random player with this projectile. Now, normally in WoW W, if you have a dangerous orb or effect following you, what do?
You try to kite it away from the group, maybe drop it in a corner, or make it hit a wall quickly to minimize its effect or travel distance?
Precisely the wrong thing to do here. With the Dark Orb, the targeted player needs to aim it so it travels the absolute furthest possible distance before it hits something.
Wait, the further it travels, the less damage it does?
Exactly. The collision causes massive group-wide damage, and that damage is inversely proportional to the travel distance. Short travel equals huge damage. Get it wrong, you get hit with Dark Scars, which makes it even harder for the healer.
Okay, that's backwards. I can see people wiping to that constantly until they look it up.
Oh, absolutely. It punishes you for applying years of learned game logic. You pretty much needed a guide or someone explaining it. And even once you weaken an Anub'ikkaj by killing the lieutenants, the actual fight against him is still really demanding, especially for the tank.
What does the tank have to deal with?
It's messy. He summons adds with animate shadows. The tank needs to pick these up, ideally position them to be cleaved down with the boss, Plus, they have to soak these abyssal blast puddles that appear under the boss. It's a lot of multitasking and what players described as a really cramped, chaotic space.
Which brings us to the feedback about Mereldar itself. People seem to hate navigating this part.
Hated it. The sources consistently call it a navigation nightmare. Overwhelmingly described as crowded, too much trash, very high mob density.
And the visuals were a problem too.
Big time. The objectives, the lieutenant locations, they show up as yellow circles on the minimap. But the city itself, it's all yellowish stone, bathed in this sort of ambient light. So finding things, even tracking your own teammates, was apparently really hard. Groups got split up, lost.
And didn't Anub'ikkaj patrol around while you were trying to do all this?
Yes, that was a huge source of frustration. He's actively walking the streets while you're fighting trash and hunting lieutenants.
Yeah.
And his character model. Players noted he's got these long, thin legs and a tall body, making him weirdly hard to see sometimes.
Especially under bridges or overhangs.
Exactly. Particularly on the south side of the city map, there are these low stone bridges. You could be fighting trash right under one, and suddenly, boom, you've accidentally pulled the main boss because you just didn't see him wandering nearby. Instant wipe if he's still fully powered.
Wow. So the environment itself was almost an antagonist. High density, bad visibility, a hard-to-spot patrolling boss. It sounds like trying to just follow the tank could get the whole group killed.
Pretty much. It
Yeah.
really felt, according to players, like you had to know this one specific safe path through the city. Deviating punished you severely. It undermined that feeling of exploring or dynamically clearing an area.
Okay, so after somehow surviving the Mereldar maze, you'd think you're home free. But there's another twist, right?
There is. Just when you think you've saved the city, you get the bad news. While you were busy fighting Anub'ikkaj,
Let me guess. They took back the airship.
bingo. General Steelstrike has his moment of panic, the one that players really came to dread hearing. Wait, no. They've sent a force back up and retaken the Dawnbreaker.
Oh, man. So you have to go back up then.
Back up you go, fly back to the ship. There's another mini-boss, Trash Pull, the Nightfall Dark Architect. Defeating him summons the actual final boss,
And who's the grand finale?
a nasty piece of work called Rasha'nan. The lore describes her as a winged horror from the depths of Azj-Kahet, Queen Ansaric's secret weapon.
Sounds imposing. Is it another complex fight?
Oh yeah, it's a two-phase fight, and phase one immediately throws another environmental puzzle at you. It's called Bombing the Horror.
Bombing. So not just straight DPS.
Not at all. Rasha'nan starts at 100% health, but you don't just burn her down. The goal is to get her to 65% HP to trigger phase two, and you do that primarily using bombs.
Where do the bombs come from?
Enemy Nightfall bombers fly by and drop these Arathi bombs onto the deck. They start sparking. A player has to run over, pick one up using an extra action button,
Okay.
and then throw it at Rasha'nan. A successful hit takes off a nice chunk, about 5.8% of her health. But here's the pressure. You only have 20 seconds from when the bomb lands to throw it.
And if you don't?
Boom. Party wipe. Instantly.
Wow. Okay, so who handles the bombs? Seems like a specific job.
The guides definitely recommended DPS players handle it, mainly because carrying the bomb applies a ticking damage effect to you, so you want someone who can maybe handle that damage or isn't actively tanking or healing the whole group.
So DPS are playing hot potato with bombs. What are the tank and healer doing?
They've got their hands full. The tank needs to manage Tacky Burst, which is a big tank hit, and it carries over into phase two. The healer is dealing with Erosive Spray, that's heavy group-wide damage over time, applies 3 stacks of this lingering erosion debuff that you can't dispel.
Undispellable. Ouch. So healers need big cooldowns for that.
Absolutely. It's a very segmented fight in phase one. Everyone has their critical high-pressure job. If one person messes up the bombs or the healer falls behind an erosive spray, it falls apart fast.
Okay, so you managed to bomb her down to 65%. What happens then? Phase two, the chase.
Yep. She decides she's had enough and flees. Flies off across Hallowfall towards a place called the Veneration Grounds. And General Steelstrike yells.
Let me guess. Pursue the monster.
You got it. And this triggers the second mandatory in-combat skywriting section of the dungeon, and arguably the most infuriating part for many groups.
Why was this one so bad? Is it just flying again?
It's flying under extreme pressure with, again, really poor communication or contradictory instructions. The whole area you're flying through is filled with encroaching shadows.
Instant death field, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
To survive, you have to fly through these little golden orbs floating in the air. Light fragments. They give you a temporary buff, radiant light, that protects you.
Okay, so fly, collect orbs, stay alive. Sounds straightforward, if annoying.
But here's the kicker. The game tells you to pursue the monster. But if you actually follow Rasha'nan's flight path directly,
You die.
often, yes, because her path doesn't necessarily take you through enough light fragments to keep the buff up. The orbs are scattered, and her route isn't the orb collecting route.
So the instruction is wrong, or misleading at best.
Deeply misleading. The sources are full of players saying they wiped repeatedly because they were trying to follow the boss, like the game told them to.
So what was the actual way to do it?
Well, the intended way seems to have been this awkward weaving path to grab enough orbs while sort of keeping up. But what players quickly figured out was much weirder.
What?
You basically ignore the boss entirely. You just make a beeline straight for the final landing spot at Veneration Grounds. There's a big bubble of light there from the Arathi.
And just hope you get there before the shadow kills you.
Pretty much. If you were fast enough, or maybe got lucky with 1 or 2 orbs on the direct path, you could often land safely in the light bubble just as your protection expired. It completely bypassed the whole chase the boss, collect the orbs mechanic.
That sounds broken, or at least like a failure of the intended design.
It created chaos in pickup groups. The tank might know the shortcut and just zoom ahead. Meanwhile, the DPS and healer are trying to actually follow the boss or collect orbs like they think they're supposed to, run out of the buff midair, and poof, gone.
So follow the tank. The cardinal rule of dungeons was again the wrong move here. Everyone had to know the secret shortcut or the precise, unintuitive orb path.
Exactly. Individual knowledge trumped group coordination in a really frustrating way. And even when you land,
Yeah.
you're not quite done. You land in that light bubble, and Rasha'nan is there, starting to cast Acidic Eruption. You have to interrupt that cast immediately before you can finally finish burning down her remaining health.
Wow. A frantic finish to a frantic chase. It really sounds like a pressure cooker from start to finish.
Okay, so let's step back from the mechanics and look at the overall player reaction. The ambition is obvious, right? Airship combat, city siege, this flying chase. It sounds epic on paper.
Yeah, the concepts are cool, but the feedback seems to suggest the execution was rough, like horrid, as some put it.
That's a fair summary of the initial wave of reactions. And the complaints started literally the moment the dungeon began, with something beyond just gameplay mechanics.
You mean the motion sickness?
Exactly. This was a huge issue, and it points to a potential accessibility oversight. It wasn't just difficult, it was physically uncomfortable for a lot of players.
What caused it? Was it the flying?
Not just the flying itself, but specifically the first boss fight on the ship. The problem was the platform you're standing on, it's stationary. But the background, the scenery, the clouds, Howlfall speeding by underneath, it's moving really fast.
Ah, that disconnect. Stable foreground, fast-moving background. That can definitely trigger vertigo.
Yeah, and it hit people hard. We saw reports from players who said they never get motion sick in games, but the Dawnbreaker made them feel genuinely nauseous.
That's a pretty big design flaw, especially since this wasn't the first time WoW W had this issue, right? People compared it to the Maw of Souls.
They did. Maw of Souls had similar issues with fast environmental movement causing sickness. The criticism was, why wasn't this learned from? Why launch Dawnbreaker without the kind of accessibility options or camera tweaks that eventually helped mitigate the Maw issues? It felt like a step backwards, physically blocking some people from the content.
Yeah, I read anecdotes, people having to stare at their character's feet just to play, or needing to lie down afterwards. That's not ideal.
Not ideal at all.
Yeah.
And beyond the physical issues, the dungeon was apparently riddled with bugs and technical problems, especially at launch. These weren't just annoying, they often completely broke the run.
What kind of technical issues are we talking about?
The big one was the ship itself, sometimes just not loading for players. They'd zone in, run towards the starting area, and just fall right through the world. Dead. Key over.
Oof. That's rough.
Yeah. Then there were class issues. Pets bugging out, getting no path available constantly, druids being unable to use their flight form for the mandatory flight sections, having to use a regular mount.
Wait, really? That seems like a major oversight for Druid.
Apparently so. And maybe most critically for group survival, Blood Death Knights reported their main defensive cooldown, Dancing Rune Weapon, sometimes just wouldn't hit the boss. Like, it would activate but failed to connect, maybe due to the platform's state or boss positioning. Losing your big defensive like that is potentially lethal.
So, unintuitive mechanics, motion sickness, and game-breaking bugs. That's a rough combination. And then there was the voice line.
The voice line. General Steel Strike. You could almost feel the collective groan from the player base through the forums.
If the Order of Knights steals the Dawnbreaker, Merildar will be defenseless. Over and over.
And over. And over. People joked about hearing it dozens of times in a single run. It became this meme, this symbol of the dungeon's repetitive stress. It wasn't helpful, it wasn't informative after the first time, it was just grating. Psychological warfare via dialogue loop.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. What were the core failures in intuition that made Dawnbreaker so infamous initially?
Number one, definitely the forced skywriting in combat on the first boss. Punishing established muscle memory without extremely clear instruction. Instant death failure state.
Right, number two.
The Merildar section. The navigation nightmare. High mob density. Bad visibility with the map colors. And that hard-to-see patrolling boss making accidental pulls too common. It rewarded memorizing a guide, not adapting to the environment.
Gotcha. And the third big one?
The final chase. The Rasha'nan pursuit, where the game tells you follow the boss, but doing so gets you killed. Survival depends on ignoring the instruction, and either knowing the awkward orb path or knowing the exploit-like shortcut to the end zone. Again, punishing intuition, rewarding external knowledge.
It really does sound like a pile of frustrating mechanics and unclear decisions, as the feedback suggests. It hits all the notes players tend to dislike. Forced vehicles, tight wipe timers, confusing layouts.
Exactly. It drew comparisons to all the usual suspects. Oculus, Grimrail Depot, dungeons known for forcing players into uncomfortable or unintuitive situations.
But there was that counterpoint you mentioned earlier that for some groups, once they mastered it, it became easy.
Yeah, that's the fascinating twist in the narrative. While the initial learning curve was brutal and felt unfair to many, some high-end Mythic Plus players reported that once you knew exactly what to do, the precise dark orb angles, the fastest flight paths, the bomb timings, the Merildar skip routes, maybe the dungeon actually became very fast.
Like one of the quickest keys of the season.
For groups that had it down pat, yes. It transformed from worst dungeon ever to surprisingly efficient, but only because those groups had obtained the perfect, often counterintuitive knowledge needed to bypass or optimize the frustrating parts. Hashtag tag outro.
So wrapping this up, the Dawnbreaker seems like a case study in ambitious ideas hitting execution problems. The visuals, the concepts, airships, sieges sound amazing.
They really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the experience got dragged down by, well, a couple of key things. Technical issues were one part, like the loading failures.
Yeah.
But the bigger issue was the design itself actively fighting player intuition, especially that forced skywriting in combat.
Right. So the big takeaway here for you listening is how understanding something like this means looking at both sides. You have the official design, the rules, and then you have how the community actually interacts with it, the real world experience.
Yeah, and Dawnbreaker is a perfect example. The fact that players found shortcuts, like just beelining to the end of the final chase instead of collecting orbs, that shows a huge gap between what the designers intended and what actually worked best or was least frustrating for players.
It basically demanded you have perfect knowledge, probably from reading a guide or wiping a lot, just to get through it without tearing your hair out. Discovery wasn't really rewarded. Preparation was mandatory.
Exactly. The learning often came from failure, not intuition.
And that brings up that final thought, doesn't it? Even in this epic fantasy world, maybe the most important thing is just clear communication. Visual cues, instructions, dialogue that actually helps.
Right. The sources seem to show that clarity is what separates a memorable challenge from just a miserable one. So the question we leave you with is this. If a piece of content requires perfect external knowledge of counterintuitive rules just to succeed, does that make it good, challenging design? Or does it just make it inaccessible? Something to think about.
Watch your step. AOE incoming. Watch your step. Run out. AOE incoming. Watch your step. Watch your step. AOE incoming. Watch your step. Target you. AOE incoming.
My empathy brings you power.
Watch your step.